So the first sentence says what community organizations need to do, right? That sounds like a conclusion. I'm not saying it is, but it sounds like one. And then the next sentence, taking this approach makes the public more receptive. Would that be a premise or another conclusion based on the first one? What do you think, Dennis?
Could be really wrong, but I thought that the second sentence was like the conclusion.
So taking this approach makes the public more receptive. To me, that seems like a reason why you should do it. As opposed to, you need to do this, therefore it will be easier. Right? Like the fact that it's easier is why you should do it, rather than the fact that you should do it is why it is easier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, so I think what threw me off was like the last sentence, because I thought that I thought that the first and the last sentences were premises because they were referring to the approach, which I read as convincing that the programs have bigger benefits. Like
That they benefit the public, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you want to get money for higher education programs, you need to frame it in a way that says, hey, the public's going to benefit. Now, one thing we do know for sure, what clue in here tells us that the last sentence is definitely a premise? For example, examples are always premises. Okay, so when you're looking at this, you have three options or three sentences, so you probably have three parts. Not always, sometimes you have more than one part in a sentence. But for example, so we know the last sentence is a premise. So we have 1, 2, 3. So then this becomes a premise for what? If it's if they say for example, then it must be a premise for something that was just said, right? Because whenever you say for example, you're trying to elaborate on what you said earlier. So this must be a conclusion. The question is it the main conclusion or an intermediate conclusion? And then this is where it comes down to debating these two things, right? And if I put the word therefore between these two sentences, and I said, hey, community organizers who want to do this need to convince the public that such programs benefit society as a whole, therefore taking this approach makes the public much more receptive. It doesn't make as much sense as taking this approach makes the public more receptive, therefore you need to do it this way. Dennis?
Okay, I mean, I guess I was thrown off by the fact that it doesn't say what the approach is.
Well, yeah, I mean, this approach is referring to convincing the public.
Yeah.
I mean, they can do that because they're saying that second sentence second. When I'm doing the test, though, I have to think in my head, what is that approach, of course. But do you agree that that second option makes more sense?
Yeah.
That's called the therefore test. You take two ideas, you're not sure which one is the main conclusion, you put therefore in between them, and whichever flows more logically, then whatever came after therefore is the conclusion based on the other one, right? Because sometimes they don't give us these indicators. All right, so that means this is the main conclusion, and this must be an intermediate conclusion. And then they say, hey, which one most accurately expresses the main conclusion or overall conclusion? So what type of question is this? Conclusion question. Answer choice A says the first sentence. Sounds pretty good. What are these other answers? Premises or intermediate conclusions, right? They're the other parts of the argument. Other answers that were tempting. D. Convincing the public that higher education programs will benefit society as a whole makes the public more receptive to those programs. That's the second sentence, right? So Dennis, is that what you chose? Did you choose G?
I choose B.
Oh. It is easier to get the public to support programs that are seen as benefiting everyone. Oh, I guess, I feel like D is a pretty good restatement of the second sentence. But, yeah.
It was between D and B.
Ah, there you go. So you You're like, that's the problem, right? The problem actually occurred before you even went into the answer choices, because you identified that as the main conclusion. All right, any other questions on this one? Okay.